Well, let's have a look at the last one. This one is a bit of a special case because in general I will not be asking you to use a computer when we're going through this programming question. I'll use it to demonstrate some of the code that we're looking at, but you're basically asked what is the difference between these two code blocks, and if you look really closely you can see that the second for loop is indented one space further. So what does that mean? Well, that means this one will have one for loop and then it'll have the next for loop. This one has one for loop and then the second for loop runs inside of the first one. So over here on the left hand side, it's gonna print out 5 times hello, then 5 times world. Over here, it's gonna print hello, 5 times world, hello, 5 times world, and it'll do that 5 times. So this is a nested for loop. It's inside of the other one. So that's basically the difference between these two, is whether or not the second for loop is nested inside of the first one. Explain the usage of flow control. So how does while, if, elif, all of that, else statements, how does that actually work? Well, in general, if we jump to our, where did I put my Colab? There we go. I'm just gonna clear out from the last assignment. So we have some different ones. So I can do my for loop, and the for loop I have some different options if I know the number of times I wanted to run. So if I wanted to run for I in range 5, for instance, then it runs, I believe, 5 times. And I just need one of those. We're just gonna print out I, and you can see it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we have to be aware that we start at 0 and move up to 4, and that's basically how a for loop works. You can also, so if I had a what can we do for I in actually I don't know if this will work. We will try. Yeah. So I have my data frame from the earlier code I ran. I know I didn't code it again. So in this case, actually let's do name. So here you can see that what the code does is it takes this column from the data frame and it runs through every name, and every time it runs through, the I value will be the name of that particular row, and then it prints it out. So you can do it for data structures where you run through each individual value. So that could, for instance, be if I wanted to do a plot with x values. Well, if I have a list of the x values I want, I can use a for loop to run through each of them. Let's clear out the output. While loops, I normally say you use while loops when you're not sure how many times you want to run a particular code. So I could say while something is true, continue to run this code. So as an example we looked at with the plotting, I could say while my y value is smaller than 300, run this calculation where I increase the value. So I could say I'm gonna make a pointless one, but I'm gonna say while I is less than 5, print smiley. If I just did this is where I have to be a bit careful, because now I just go into an infinite loop and it'll just keep running and running because the I value never changes. It never goes above 5. So normally what we do is we could, for instance, have a place where we are saying I want to increase it by 1 every time, and then it runs 5 times, right? So this, if I were to do something like this, normally I would do it in a for loop, but you could imagine if I don't know, like if the I value is calculated based on the data I have, I might not know where it starts out. So that's where you could use a while loop as well. And for the other controls that we have, we basically have our if, elif, and else. So the way these work is, the if is the one I open this up with, and I can say, okay, if my I is equal to 5, I can print out, I don't know, cola. And then I have a few options, because I can just run it like this. And I can say, if this is true, it prints cola, otherwise it does nothing. If I wanted to do different things, I can say the elif, I can say if I is equal to 3, it should do something. What shall it do? It shall print Pokemon. And you can basically have as many of these as you want. So elif I is, what shall we say, smaller than 5, print test. And for now we're just going to remove this. So as a test, if I run this, I expect to only see cola, which I do. If I do 4, I see test. Here's what you should be aware of. If I do 3, I see, hang on, why don't I see my test? It doesn't jump on to the next one. Yeah, so you have to be careful about this. So if you wanted to do both, you have to be a bit careful, because it basically breaks out and says as soon as I is 3, it's gonna print this and then do nothing else. Okay? And finally, we can have sort of a catch-all. So that's basically if none of the others actually do anything, no matter what I say that I is, I could put it equal to some, sorry, where do we have it? Oh, you can't do that, fair enough. Yeah, so you have to be a bit careful with these Boolean. You can't do larger than or smaller than when I'm working with test with text. So in this case, even though all of these checks are for numbers, the else one will catch anything and basically say, yeah, if none of these were triggered, I'm gonna do the final part. So that's basically the flow controls that we'll usually encounter in Python. And there are some more. You can break out of loops if certain things are found to be true. So you could have a while loop that runs, and then if, I don't know, the y value goes above 1 million, you say, okay, something has gone wrong. I want you to break out of the while loop you're in. But I don't expect you to know that off by heart. But that's how you could actually approach this. But as I say, normally this question we would just do on the whiteboard, have a discussion about some of the options we have. But yeah, I hope that helps.